Right. How's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Sunday, January 12th, 2020. Happy New Year to everyone who have not seen any of my broadcasts in the new year. Hope everybody's doing well today. Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. So on my January 5th, 2020 show, the Sunday edition of the African History Network show that I do every Sunday night on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF here in Detroit, I talked briefly about a new Netflix 4-part series, limited series, that is debuting in March 2020, that is about the life of Madam C.J. Walker, okay? And I have a lot of information to cover. You can go back and watch that broadcast on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, as well as our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. But I wanted to talk more about this documentary, about this 4-part series. It stars Octavia Spencer, actress Octavia Spencer as Madam C.J. Walker. And I'm looking forward to seeing it, okay? It's based upon, so the name of the 4-part series is called Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. Okay, so we're going to talk some about that. And then also, I want to talk a little bit about Annie Turnbo Malone. Annie Turnbo Malone was the mentor of Madam C.J. Walker. Okay, and a lot of people don't know about Annie Turnbo Malone. And it was really Annie Malone. She was the one who really created the Black Haircare industry. All right, and a lot of people don't know this. All right, so how's everybody doing? We got Dupree, number of people watching us on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network as well. And we'll also tell you about, since African American History Month is coming up, I'll let you know about our new bundle pack. It's a Black History Month bundle pack that I have with my DVD lectures. It includes 16 of my lectures in this one bundle pack. All right, so let's look at this article here from Deadline.com. Deadline.com. Netflix sets premiere date for Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker, unveils first look at Octavia Spencer, a limited series. And thegrio.com has an article about this. Shadow and Act was the first article I saw dealing with this series. But Netflix just unveiled the first look at Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. In it, Octavia Spencer stars as the trailblazing African-American hair entrepreneur who was America's first self-made millionaire. Now, there's a discrepancy over whether it was Annie Turnbo Malone who was the first self-made millionaire or whether it was Madam C.J. Walker. And I'll get to that. I'll talk some about the history of these two women. Now, inspired by the book On Her Own Ground, the life and times of Madam C.J. Walker, written by Madam C.J. Walker's great-great-granddaughter, Lelia Bundles. The Netflix original series brings the uplifting story of this cultural icon to the screen for the first time. All right, so it's going to debut March 20th, 2020. I've seen some pictures, some still pictures from it. It looks very, very interesting. Against all odds, Madam C.J. Walker overcame post-slavery racial and gender biases, personal betrayals, and business rivalries to build a groundbreaking brand, that revolutionized Black hair care, as she simultaneously fought for social change. So she was a philanthropist. She just wasn't a phenomenal businesswoman. She didn't she not only employed hundreds of African Americans, especially African American women, but she was also a philanthropist as well. She was an activist. She fought for social change. She got involved in the anti-lynching movement as well, especially after the 1917 East St. Louis, Illinois race riot that broke out that leads to the Silent March of 1917, where you have 10,000 African Americans marching down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, demanding federal anti-lynching laws. Okay, so she donates to the YMCA, NAACP, all different types of things like this. So she was a phenomenal woman, and she dies at 51 years old of hypertension. So life cut too short. Trailblazing woman, life cut way too short. So in this 4-part limited series, it stars Octavia Spencer, who we saw in The Help, and we've seen in other movies as well. We saw her in Hidden Figures as well, Octavia Spencer. Blair Underwood plays her husband, C.J. Walker, okay? And his name was Charles Joseph Walker. And Madam C.J. Walker, so Madam C.J. Walker, her birth name was Sarah Breedlove. She's going to marry Charles Joseph Walker in 1906, and he was a newspaper advertising salesman. And she's going to take the CJ that comes from his name, so she becomes Madam CJ Walker. That's how we know her as, but her real name was Sarah Breedlove. Okay, so Blair Underwood, who's a fantastic actor, he portrays her husband. Also, you have, let's see here, what happened? Okay, also you have Tiffany Haddish is going to play her daughter, Lilia, okay? And, I like Tiffany Haddish. I know a lot of people criticize Tiffany Haddish, and I have some criticisms. Sometimes I keep the criticisms to myself. I don't put everything on social media. I like Tiffany Haddish. I know she's been through a lot in her life. Hopefully, this role here, I think it's a non-comedic role, I think. So hopefully this role here will put Tiffany Haddish, will show a different side of her talents, so she doesn't have to keep playing a lot of these roles that depict her as being crass and loud and foul-mouthed and things like that. Okay, so I'm not saying that is who she actually is, but a lot of times actors and actresses can get typecasted or pigeonholed into a certain type of role. So either these are the type of roles that they're offered, or maybe these are the type of roles that pay the most, what have you. Okay, I know she probably gets offered roles that she turns down, but hopefully this will show a different side of her talents as well. Because, I saw Girl Trip, and, I like to see sisters in movies, and I like for the movie to do over $100 million. But, I just have to ask the question, you have basically an all-star cast with Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett Smith. You have a newcomer, Tiffany Haddish, and then you had also I forgot the other sister's name. I see her, I could see her face, but I forgot her name. But I have to ask the question: why do our movies have to have so much cursing, drug usage, vulgarities, things like this? You don't have to do that for the movie to be funny. I'm just saying. So, and I know they're going to make a Girls Trip 2, and I hope it's not going to be twice as vulgar. All right. What's her name? Regina Hall. Yeah. Regina Hall's a fantastic actress, but it's like, you sit back and look at this, and our movies don't have to be like that to be successful. Comedies don't have to be like that to be successful. So I was glad to see Tiffany Haddish is going to be in this movie as well. So Carmen Ejogo will portray Madam C.J. Walker's business rival, Addie Monroe. Okay. And now this is the article from thegrio.com. I want to flip over to the article from deadline.com, because they say business rival Addie Monroe. Garrett Morris will portray Madam C.J. Walker's father-in-law, Kevin Carroll, as her longtime lawyer, Kevin Carroll. Freeman Ransom and Bill Bellamy will portray Ransom's cousin, Sweetness. All right. Now, the limited series is produced by Spring Hill Entertainment and Wonder Street in association with Warner Brothers. Television is helmed by co-showrunners L. Johnson and Janine Sherman Barrows, Barrois. Okay, you could check out the rest of this yourself. When they talk about her business rival, Addie Monroe, I wonder if they're referring to Annie Turnbo Malone. I'm not sure who, this is first I've heard of Addie Monroe, and I'm going to Google this right here. But Annie Turnbo Malone was her mentor and then became a business rival. So I'm trying to find out if Annie Turnbo Malone is going to be portrayed in the series. Okay, so a lot of people are not familiar with Annie Turnbo Malone. Okay, so I'm going to talk about her as well, because it's quite possible that Annie Turnbo Malone was the one who was the first self-made female millionaire, and not Madam C.J. Walker. All right. And there's a few reasons for that. Okay, so let's look at some information. Let's look at some history dealing with Madam C.J. Walker. Well, first of all, she was born December 23rd, 1867 in Delta, Louisiana, to Owen and Minerva Breedlove. Okay, so she was born a former slave. She's born 2 years after slavery ends, after the Civil War ends in June 2nd, 1865, after the 13th Amendment of December 1865. Okay, she's going to be born. She was one of 6 children. She had a sister named Lavinia, Louvenia, and 4 brothers, Alexander, James, Solomon, and Owen Jr. Her parents and elder siblings were slaves on Madison Parish Plantation, owned by Robert W. Burney, Burney. She was the first child in her family born into freedom, because she's just born 2 years after slavery ends. And incidentally, Annie Turnbo Malone, who she goes to work for in 1905, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Annie Turnbo Malone was born 2 years after Madam C.J. Walker. Annie Malone was born in 1869. So she's going to be born 2 years after slavery ends. Her mother dies possibly from cholera in 1872, and her father remarried and died shortly afterwards. Now, Madam C.J. Walker moved in with her older sister and brother-in-law named Willie Powell, Powell. At the age of 14, she married Moses McWilliams to escape Willie Powell's mistreatment. And 3 years later, her daughter, Lilia McWilliams, who became known as Lilia Walker, A'Lelia, Lilia Walker. Now, when Sarah Breedlove, because that was her birth name, Sarah Breedlove was 20 years old, her husband dies, and Lilia was just 2 years old at the time. Shortly afterwards, she moves to St. Louis, where 3 of her brothers lived. They were barbers, okay? Cut hair, they were barbers at a local barbershop. And it's going to be in St. Louis that she's going to meet Charles Joseph Walker, who gives her the name C.J. Walker. And she marries Charles Joseph Walker in 1906. He was a newspaper advertising salesman. Now, it's going to be in 1905 that she goes to work for Annie Turnbo Malone. All right, I'll come to that in just a minute. What's going to happen is she's going to develop a hair ailment. Okay, during the 1890s, Sarah Breedlove began to suffer from a scalp ailment that caused her to lose most of her hair. She experimented with many homemade remedies and store-bought products, including those made by Annie Malone, another African-American woman entrepreneur. And Annie Turnbo Malone is, when you really research this history, Annie Turnbo Malone is the one who really gets the credit for creating the black hair care industry. Now, this doesn't take anything away from Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, Sarah Breedlove in 1905 was hired by Annie Turnbo Malone, and Annie Turnbo Malone had a black hair care company. Okay, this is before Sarah Breedlove creates her Madam Walker's Wonderful Hair grower, okay, and creates her company. All right, so it stands to reason that it was not Madam C.J. Walker who created the black hair care industry. It was Annie Turnbo Malone, who was her mentor. All right, so this doesn't take anything away from Madam C.J. Walker. They were both great women in their own right. But so what's going to happen is in 1905, Sarah moves. She's going to 1906 marry Charles Joseph Walker. After changing her name to Madam C.J. Walker, she founded her own business and began selling Madam Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower, which was a scalp conditioning and healing formula, which she claimed had been revealed to her in a dream. Now, Madam C.J. Walker, by the way, did not invent the straightening comb or chemical perms, though many people incorrectly believe that to be true. All right. So if you look at, I think this is MadamCJWalker.com. I've looked at a number of sources for this because I deal with Madam C.J. Walker and Annie Turnbo Malone in my lecture series, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. But it was not Madam C.J. Walker who created the straightening comb or chemical perms. All right. And if we look at the website, MadamCJWalker.com, MadamCJWalker.com, they have a brief biographical essay there by Lilia Bundles. And Lilia Bundles is the great granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. Okay. So if we look at the inventor, Garrett Morgan, all right? Garrett Morgan was the one who really is credited with inventing the first hair straightener. Try to pull this up. So what happened was, we know Garrett A. Morgan, you know, he created the gas mask and he created the stoplight, the traffic signal, things like this, right? But he was also a tailor. He owned a clothing shop. And blackinventor.com had an article dealing with this. Now, let me see if it still exists. The article still exists. But what happened was he was experimenting with some chemicals one day, and he had it on a table next to some fabric. And the chemicals actually spilled on the fabric. And when he came back, he saw that the fibers on the fabric were standing up. Okay. And he's going to experiment with this. And from that, he's going to create a hair straightener. All right. So let me see if I can pull this up here, because I had it bookmarked, but it's not coming up. So a lot of times you will see, a lot of times you will have it where it's one historical figure who gets a lot of credit for a number of different things, when really it's multiple people, right? So to promote her products, Madam C.J. Walker traveled for a year and a half across the country throughout the heavily Black South and Southeast, selling her products door to door, demonstrating her scalp treatments in churches and lodges, and devising sales and marketing strategies. Okay. In 1908, she temporarily moved her base to Pittsburgh, where she opened Lelia College, Lelia, to train Walker hair culturalists. Okay. Because this is what she called her hairstylists and things like this, hair culturalists. By early 1910, she had settled in Indianapolis, then the nation's largest inland manufacturing center, where she built a factory, hair and manicure salon, and another training school. Less than a year after her arrival, Madam C.J. Walker grabbed national headlines in the Black press when she contributed $1,000 to the building fund of the colored YMCA in Indianapolis. All right. And then we know she's going to get involved in the anti-lynching movement as well, because of the East St. Louis, Illinois race riot in 1917. When a white mob murdered more than 3 dozen African Americans. I've talked about that. I did a separate broadcast a couple of years ago, actually in 2017, when we commemorated the 100-year anniversary of the East St. Louis race riot and the Silent March of 1917 as well. Okay, because the Silent March was organized by the NAACP. It's actually organized by James Weldon Johnson of the NAACP. James Weldon Johnson, in 1899, wrote a poem which became known as Lift Every Voice and Sing. He wrote in 1899, and it became known as Lift Every Voice and Sing, which became the Negro National Anthem, which is known as the Black National Anthem, right? But he organizes a silent protest of African Americans in 1917, 10,000 African Americans marching down Manhattan, protesting the lynchings and demanding federal anti-lynching legislation. That was James Weldon Johnson. All right, so let me see here. So I pulled this up. Blackinventor.com has a entry here for Garrett Morgan, inventor Garrett Morgan, and I'm trying to see if they have it here. Okay, so they talk about this. In 1909, Garrett Morgan opened a tailoring shop selling coats, suits, and dresses. While working in this shop, he came upon a discovery which brought about his first invention. He noticed that the needle of a sewing machine moved so fast that its friction often scorched the thread of the woolen materials. He thus set out to develop a liquid that would provide a useful polish to the needle, reducing friction. When his wife called him to dinner, he wiped the liquid from his hands onto a piece of pony fur cloth, PONY-FUR, pony fur cloth. When he returned to his workshops, he saw that the fibers on the cloth were now standing straight up. He theorized that the fluid had actually straightened the fibers. In order to confirm his theory, he decided to apply some of the fluid to the hair of a neighbor's dog. Okay, the fluid straightened the dog's hair so much, the neighbor, not recognizing his own pet, chased the animal away. Garrett Morgan then decided to try the fluid on himself. So he put the fluid on small portions of his hair at first, and then to his entire head. He was successful and had invented the first human hair straightener. He marketed the product under the name the G.A. Morgan Hair Refining Cream, the G.A. Morgan Hair Refining Cream, and sold it through his company, the G.A. Morgan Refining Company, which became a successful business. All right. So in 1912, Garrett Morgan developed another invention, much different from his hair straightener. Morgan called a safety hood and patented as a breathing device, but the world came to know it as a gas mask. Okay, so check this out, blackinventor.com, blackinventor.com. There's a lot more here. I just don't have time to get through it. This is dealing with inventor Garrett A. Morgan. All right. So when we look at Madam C.J. Walker, so she did not invent the hair straightening comb. She did not invent the hair relaxer. All right. But this doesn't take anything away from her greatness. All right. So it's going to be her husband who her husband, Charles Joseph Walker, who encourages to use the more recognizable moniker or name, Madam C.J. Walker, as opposed to calling herself Sarah Breedlove, because they just don't have a ring to it. Okay, Sarah Breedlove. All right, so as profits continue to grow, in 1908, Madam C.J. Walker opened a factory and a beauty school in Pittsburgh, and by 1910, when Walker transferred her business operations to Indianapolis, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company had become widely successful, with profits that were the modern day equivalent of several $1 million in today's dollars. In Indianapolis, the company not only manufactured cosmetics, but also trained sales beauticians. These were the Walker agents, and they became well known throughout the African-American communities of the United States. In turn, they promoted Walker's philosophy of, quote, cleanliness and loveliness as a means of advancing the status of African Americans. An innovator, Madam C.J. Walker organized clubs and conventions for her representatives, which recognized not only successful sales, okay, those who were successful in sales, but also philanthropic and educational efforts among African Americans. Now, she was doing this. She would have these conventions that rewarded her salespeople for hitting sales goals, things like this. She was doing this before Mary Kay and Avon started doing this, all right? In 1913, Madam C.J. Walker and Charles Joseph Walker were going to divorce, and she traveled throughout Latin America and the Caribbean promoting her business and recruiting others to teach her hair care methods, okay? Because she was employing hundreds of people. While her mother traveled, her daughter, Alilia Walker, helped facilitate the purchase of property in Harlem, New York, recognizing that the area would be an important base for future business operations. In 1916, upon returning from her travels, Madam C.J. Walker moved to her new townhouse in Harlem. From there, she would continue to operate her business while leaving the day-to-day operations of her factory in Indianapolis to its forelady. Now, Walker quickly immersed herself in Harlem's social and political culture. She founded philanthropies that included educational scholarships and donations to homes for the elderly, the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the National Conference of Lynching, the National Conference on Lynching, National Conference on Lynching, among other organizations focused on improving the lives of African Americans. She also donated large amounts of money to African Americans. She also donated large amounts of money for the construction of an African American YMCA as well, or what they call a colored YMCA in 1913. She's going to die of hypertension on May 25th, 1919, at the age of 51, okay, at the estate home she had built for herself in Irvington on Hudson in New York. At the time of her death, Madam C.J. Walker was sole owner of her business, which was valued at more than $1 million at the time. Her personal fortune was estimated between $600,000 and $700,000, okay? She is widely credited as the first American a woman to be a self-made millionaire. Now, this was documented by Guinness Book of World Records in 1915, okay? Now, there is some dispute over that because many people think it was Annie Turnbo Malone who was her mentor. And also, it's reported, I'm trying to I'm going to have to go into the archives of New York Times and go pull up her obituary that the New York Times wrote in 1919 about her. But when looking at some information on this, there's the New York Times obituary, okay, because what happened was I looked at Wikipedia on this, and I don't use Wikipedia a whole lot, but I go and verify the sources. And this one here, I can't pull up this article, so I'm gonna have to go subscribe to the New York Times. I'm gonna have to go into the archives and look at this. But the obituary, when we look at, so if we go to Wikipedia and we just search for Madam C.J. Walker, and it gives information about her. And in the first segment, it talks about how, although she was eulogized as the first self-made millionaire in the U.S., her estate was worth an estimated $600,000 upon her death. Okay. According to Walker's obituary in the New York Times, it stated, quote, she had herself 2 years ago, which would have been 1917. She said herself 2 years ago, which would have been 1917, that she was not yet a millionaire, but hoped to be sometime, end quote, right? So footnote number 20, that citation is footnote number 25. Footnote number 25 lists the name of her obituary, wealthiest negress dead. The New York Times, May 16th, 1919. So New York Times has like a really shaky history when you go back and look at their history, because February 8th, 1914, New York Times had a huge article. And this article was entitled, I'm gonna get it right, because I went to the archives and read it. And this is why I had to get a subscription. This is why I had to get a subscription to the New York Times. A digital subscription cost me $15 a month, because I was researching this article here. February 8th, 1914, exactly 1 year before the movie The Birth of a Nation came out. New York Times had an article called "Negro Cocaine Fiends Are a New Southern Menace. Murder and Insanity Increasing Among Lower Class Blacks Because They Have Taken to Sniffing Since Deprived of Whiskey by Prohibition." Okay, this was a huge article. It's a historical article. People who study the history of drug laws in this country know about this article. Okay, this is from February 8th, 1914, written by Edward Huntington Williams, MD, for the New York Times. And this article deals with the fear, this article, so this is during Prohibition, okay? And this article deals with the fear of what will these black men do when they're high on cocaine. And cocaine is going to be made illegal. And this is one of the reasons why cocaine was made illegal, okay? Because when we look at the history of drug laws in this country, as long as white people were using these drugs, it wasn't a problem. When you go study this, you go study marijuana, hemp, okay? You go study marijuana. As long as white people were using these drugs, it wasn't a problem. When non-white people start using these drugs, like opium, okay, the first anti-drug laws in this country are basically the 1875 anti-opium laws in California, specifically, I think it was San Francisco. This was against Chinese men who were working on the railroads, constructing the railroads, and they were using opium. And there was a fear that these Chinese men, when they're high on opium, will they try to rape white women? The same fear they had about black men high on cocaine. And they were talking about how cocaine gave them superhuman strength. And they were asking the question, do police officers now need to carry a 45 caliber handgun because a 38 was not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine? Okay. Then exactly 1 year after that, the movie The Birth of a Nation comes out. And you saw my broadcast I did dealing with why African Americans eat black eyed peas on New Year's Day. And we started talking about the stereotypes of watermelons, things like this, right? And watermelons go back to ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago. Okay, so go back and watch that broadcast. But the watermelon stereotype was shown in the movie The Birth of a Nation. Okay, it's what watermelons and fried chicken and things like this. But in the movie The Birth of a Nation, right, which rejuvenates the Ku Klux Klan, because the Ku Klux Klan are shown as the heroes in the movie The Birth of a Nation. There's a scene depicting a black man trying to rape a white virgin. Okay, and this movie causes race riots in the streets. The Birth of a Nation, February 8th, 1915. And rightfully so, we protested against the movie as well. We had some sense then. Today, you know, we sit up and watch Empire. If you know, and even when the TV show Amos and Andy came on in the 1950s, we had sense enough to protest that. The NAACP protested the TV show Amos and Andy. Today, they'll give image awards to the TV show Empire. If something like Empire had been on back in the 50s, we would have protested that also because of the negative stereotypical images. Okay, so check this. So check out this article here from New York Times, and then also 100 years later, thenation.com did a follow-up. January 29th, 2014, 100 years later, how the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend helped shape American drug policy, by Carl L. Hart. How the myth of the Negro cocaine fiend helped shape American drug policy. In 1914, a racist fiction helped sell one of the nation's first drug laws. 100 years later, it's still with us. Okay, that's from thenation.com. We'll post that link here. All right, how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. We've got Angela. Is that pronounced Angela? Maya. Who else we have here? Dupree. Just a few of the people watching. Okay, just a few of the people watching here. Hold on. Okay, who else we have? All right, African-American business owners, post the name of your business here in the thread of the broadcast. And email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. A current promotion, buy 1 month, get 2 months free. That's going on for a few more days. And we also will take your 30-second to 60-second commercial and put it into the audio podcast of our shows, and also promote your business through our Facebook Live broadcast as well. Okay. So email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We can get you up and running today. All right. Okay. So Dupree said, I don't watch Empire. Yeah, I've done, I did a presentation a few years ago, Empire Strikes Black, the propaganda of the media. Empire Strikes Black, the propaganda of the media. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. This definitely helps us out a lot. PayPal. Well, we have Cash App now. $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and then also paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Okay. All right, and then we have a few new advertisers as well, and some recurring advertisers also. All right, so author Teresa Roseman is the author of the book She Remembered Her Path. Now, She Remembered Her Path is a book written by Teresa Roseman. It is a poem which centers on a character named Sheteria. Sheteria is a woman who finds herself in trouble. She feels she cannot make decisions that were simple in her younger life. The fear is she has stepped off the path she has created and now needs guidance to return to her confident self. Find out what happens to Sheteria in the book She Remembered Her Path. Is available right now on eBay, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon.com. And you can also find it in Kindle format also by author Teresa Roseman. All right, so let's continue here. Now, okay, so we talked about Annie Turnbo Malone. So now let's look at, I'm sorry, so we talked about Madam C.J. Walker. Now let's look at Annie Turnbo Malone, right? So let's see here. AtlantaBlackStar.com has a good article on Annie Turnbo Malone. 10 unknown facts about Annie Malone, the first Black female millionaire in the U.S. Now, this is from July 6, 2015. Okay, I'm going to give you some different sources on Annie Malone. All right, so, and then also, I think it was biography. Let me see who we have. Okay, because I have a lot of information on both of these ladies, so I'm just trying to summarize this for you. The Gale Encyclopedia, which is online as well. Gale Encyclopedia has some good information on Annie Turnbo Malone also. But if we look at this article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, it says everyone has heard of Oprah Winfrey and Madam C.J. Walker, but have you heard of Annie Malone? She was the first Black female millionaire with a reported $14 million in assets generated from her beauty and cosmetics company in 1920. Here are facts about the entrepreneur. So they talk about how Annie Malone was 2 years younger than Madam C.J. Walker, as I talked about. She launched her hair care business 4 years before Walker, and Walker was an employee of hers. She built a beauty college in 1918, the Poro College, P-R-O-P-O-R-O. The Poro College included her business office, manufacturing operation, and training center, as well as facilities for civic, religious, and social functions. By 1926, the college employed 175 people in St. Louis. Through its school and franchise businesses, the college created jobs for almost 75,000 women in North and South America, Africa, and the Philippines, according to an article titled Notable American Women, the Modern Period. If we look at Gale Encyclopedia, Gale Encyclopedia of Biography, okay, G-A-L-E, and it talks about Annie Turnbo Malone. So Malone was born Annie Minerva Turnbo on August 9th, 1869 in Metropolis, Illinois. She was the 10th of 11 children by Robert Turnbo, who was a poor farmer, and Isabella Cook Turnbo. Her parents died when Malone was young, and an older sister raised her in nearby Peoria, Illinois. Although she did attend school, frequent illness caused her to withdraw before completing high school. As a young girl, Annie Turnbo Malone enjoyed fashioning her own and her sister's hair. She became aware of differences in hair texture and sought a way to straighten hair, all right? So they talk about how during the late 19th century, African-American women used goose fat and heavy oils to straighten their hair. Chemical straighteners often damaged the scalp and hair follicles. While living in Lovejoy, Illinois around the turn of the century, Malone developed a chemical product that straightened African-American hair without damage. She claimed to have studied chemistry and to have been influenced by an aunt who was trained as an herbal doctor. She expanded her hair care line to include other beauty products, including her popular Wonderful Hair Grower, okay? Some historians also credit Annie Turnbo Malone with developing the pressing iron and hot comb around this time. Malone sold her products locally. In 1902, Malone moved her business to St. Louis, Missouri, where she hired and trained 3 assistants. As African-American women, they were denied access to traditional distribution systems. So they sold the products door to door and provided free demonstrations. In 1903, Annie Turnbo Malone married a a man named Pope, his last name Pope, P-O-P-E, but she divorced him after a short time because he tried to interfere with her business. During the 1904 World's Fair, Malone opened a retail outlet. Visitors to St. Louis responded favorably to her products, prompting her to embark on an innovative marketing campaign aimed at distributing the product nationally. So she created a infrastructure. She created a distribution network to distribute African American hair products. All right. She starts out selling them door to door. Madam C.J. Walker is going to do the same thing, but Madam C.J. Walker is going to learn the business from Annie Turnbo Malone, because Sarah Breedlove is hired in 1905 by Annie Turnbo Malone. Okay. So visitors to St. Louis responded well to her products, prompting her to embark on an innovative marketing campaign aimed at distributing the product nationally. In addition to going door to door, she and her trained assistants traveled to African American churches and community centers, providing free hair and scalp treatments. She held press conferences and advertised in African American newspapers. Malone traveled throughout the South at a time of racial discrimination and violence, giving demonstrations in African American churches and women's clubs. Everywhere she went, she hired and trained women to serve as local sales agents. They in turn recruited others. By 1910, distribution had expanded nationally. One of Annie Malone's recruits was Madam C.J. Walker, a former washerwoman who eventually founded her own company with similar beauty products and distribution. She is widely regarded as the most successful African-American entrepreneur of the early 20th century and founder of the Black beauty business in the United States. However, so that's Madam C.J. Walker they're referring to. However, historians credit Annie Turnbo Malone with having developed her products and distribution system first. Madam C.J. Walker sold her own wonderful hair straightener, which Annie Malone called a fraudulent limitation. As a result, Annie Turnbo Malone trademarked Poro, P-O-R-O, a new name for her product and merchandising system in 1906. Poro is a West African word for an organization dedicated to disciplining and enhancing the body spiritually and physically. Poro. Now, in 1914, Malone married Aaron Eugene Malone, an ex-teacher and Bible salesman. Her husband became the company's chief manager and president. The young couple did more than just manufacture beauty products. They also provided a way for African-American women to improve themselves on many levels. At a time when few career opportunities were available, Poro offered them a chance at economic independence. Annie Malone believed that if African-American women improved their physical appearance, they would gain greater self-respect and achieve success in other areas of their lives. Okay, so you're talking about in the early 1900s, all right? And in 1918, she's going to build Poro College. So this is during World War I. This is at the beginning of the Great Migration, 1915 and 1917, the Great Migration. I mean, so you have these two titans in business, these two African-American female titans in business who are existing at the same time, okay? They are contemporaries. They are existing at the same time. Okay, so we have Kim as well on. Let's see who else we have here. Let's see. Kim, okay, Dupree, just a few of the people watching. All right. Now, also I want to let you all know, we'll come back to Annie Turnbo Malone as well. The African American History Month is coming up, and we have a bundle pack of 15, but I just added one more. Breaking the Change while we celebrate African American History Month. Just added one more. So 16 DVD bundle pack. It's on sale right now. You'll see it on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This is on sale. $100 is basically about I think it's like a $250 value. It's on sale $100 right now for limited time only at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So this includes a lot of my presentations that you can create discussions about during African American History Month, etc. It includes presentations I've done dealing with the film Black Panther analysis, African history, culture, and Afrofuturism. A presentation I did in February 2018, Breaking the Chains, Why We Celebrate Black History Month, which deals with the history of African American History Month, deals with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and why African American History Month was created, why he co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915, September 9th, 1915 in Chicago. This also includes the distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the revolutionary, will not be televised on the television. Okay, so I deal with the revolutionary Dr. King as opposed to the emasculated Dr. King they show us on the television every Dr. King Day, like they're about to. Okay, because we know they will. All right, the revolutionary Dr. King, that tried to get a concealed pistol license in Montgomery, Alabama, 1956. The Dr. King who used the Deacons for Defense and Justice to protect civil rights workers and himself. Okay, first he's against them, but then he uses them. But Dr. King owned guns also. Early on, Dr. King owned guns. It's going to be Bayard Rustin who convinces him to get rid of his guns. All right, Dr. King's house was firebombed 2 days before the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale was filed, February 1st, 1956, which is going to be the lawsuit that goes to the U.S. Supreme Court that's going to actually end segregation on the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. All right, so you get that presentation. You get Malcolm X 50 years later. Why is he still relevant? Lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, and how to Wakanda to vote. Another very important presentation I did deals with the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the U.S. Constitution, which people mistakenly believe said we were three-fifths of a human being. That's not what it said. That's dealing with for the purpose of representation and taxation. Taxation and representation. Okay, it's not saying we were three-fifths of a human being. It's a total misunderstanding. And also the way that count was corrected by Section 2 of the 14th Amendment of 1868, which is 152 years ago. Okay. And then also I deal with the history of the Electoral College and how the Three-Fifths Compromise and Electoral College were tied to slavery and gave the Southern states a dominance and advantage in the House of Representatives, but also when it came to the presidential elections, it gave them an advantage in the Electoral College as well. 13 Forms of Wealth, Keys to Entrepreneurship and Economic Empowerment. 13 Forms of Wealth. The Racist History of the White National Anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance, where I deal with the history of the national anthem, written September 13th, 1814 by Francis Scott Key during the War of 1812. It starts out as a poem originally called Defense of Fort McHenry. It's going to be adopted later as the national anthem, what we call the Star Spangled Banner, but I call it the White National Anthem because it was written by white people, for white people, about white people, voted on by white people, signed into law by white people. And then I deal with the Pledge of Allegiance, written August 1892 by a white Methodist minister who happened to be a socialist. His name was Francis Bellamy. So, you hear a lot of these right-wing Republicans talk about the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Wouldn't they be shocked to find out it was a socialist who wrote it? Okay. You also get my presentation, my double lecture I did with Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We did a lecture together in Detroit a few years ago. So this is The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, double lecture with he and I. Redistributing the pain, how African Americans fought back with economic boycotts. Redistributing the pain, how African Americans fought back with economic boycotts. That is it's a 4-hour presentation I did dealing with his documented examples of how we fought back historically against white supremacy and racism and things like this, with different forms of economic withdrawal strategies. Okay, redistributing the pain. And redistributing the pain is redistributing the pain is a phrase that comes from Dr. King, his last speech, April 3rd, 1968. I've been to the mountaintop, but it originally came from Reverend Jesse Jackson. He talks about that in the speech, redistribute the pain. He's talking about targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies. Okay, and he says in the speech, so the speech is about 45 minutes. Okay, every Dr. King day, they just show you like the last 2 minutes of the speech where he talks about getting to the promised land. All right, but in the speech, he talks about economic empowerment, and he talks about leveraging our economics and supporting Black institutions and supporting Black insurance companies. And he lays a blueprint for economic empowerment, and he lays a blueprint for economic withdrawal strategies. That's in the speech also. They just don't play that for us, on the television when they commemorate Dr. King. Okay, they show the last 2 minutes when he talks about getting to the promised land, and I may not get there with you, but we as a people to get to the promised land, things like that. When he talks about economics, they don't show you that. Okay, I wonder why. But so I go through specific examples throughout our history showing different types of economic withdrawal strategies we engaged in. Okay, so that's a presentation called Redistributing the Pain. Next, you get The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind to Economic Empowerment. The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind to Economic Empowerment. Human Guinea Pigs, the History of the Tuskegee Experiment on the Negro Male. So this is the Tuskegee Experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. It was supposed to be a 6 to 9 month study, ended up lasting 40 years. It starts right around 1933. Contrary to popular belief, so this was ran by the U.S. Public Health Service, Department of the federal government. Contrary to popular belief, they did not inject the men with syphilis. That's not what happened. What happened was there were 600 men in the experiment. Okay, 399 of the men had an early form of syphilis where there are no symptoms. Is called latent syphilis, Latent. 201 men in the study were the control group. They did not have syphilis. Okay, what happened was proper treatment and penicillin were denied to the men. Okay, to observe how they handled it and how long they lived with syphilis without penicillin. Even when penicillin became the treatment for syphilis, they were still denied it. But contrary to popular belief and urban legend, they were not injected with syphilis. That's not what happened in that experiment. So I deal with the real history of it and how the experiment became exposed, and then the subsequent lawsuit that resulted afterwards as well. And it was attorney Fred Gray, who was also the civil rights attorney who filed the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale, February 1st, 1956. He's going to be the attorney who files the lawsuit on behalf of the survivors of the Tuskegee experiment of untreated syphilis on the Negro male. Next, you'll get Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. That's a 4-hour presentation I've done profiling great African women in our history from all different time periods, including Annie Turnbo Malone and Madam C.J. Walker. You get a Black Panther analysis for children. So this was a presentation I did in May of 2018. I was presenting to 65th through 12th graders and their teachers at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit. And I'm breaking down the film Black Panther, and I'm showing them how the film relates to African history, African culture, and how the teachers can use this to teach, how they can use these different themes to teach our history to our children. And then the 2 remaining presentations you'll get is African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. And then also you'll get And that one, that deals with three main themes. That deals with one, similarities between Trump becoming president in 2016 and Nixon becoming president in 1968. Okay. And then subsequently Nixon having to resign from office. Okay. And then I deal with how Trump is systematically reversing policies that President Obama put in place. And many of these policies we don't know existed. And many of these policies were beneficial to African Americans. But since we don't understand principles of political self-defense, okay, which is another presentation I do, 6 principles of political self-defense, and we don't understand how to assess gains that were made. And since we operate under a misconception that no gains were made, we don't know how to protect gains that were made. How do you protect gains that were made if you're operating under a misconception that no gains were made, right? So we didn't understand what was at stake in the 2016 election. And there was Russian intervention, there was Russian intervention on social media, there was rapid voter suppression taking place, all the types of things like this, right? We know the interstate cross-checking system knocked 1.1 million people off the voter rolls. Most people, I speak all across the country, most African Americans have no idea what the interstate cross-checking system was, and it targeted people with ethnic sounding names. It targeted African Americans and Hispanics. We have no idea, okay? So the same voter suppression tactics that worked in 2016, now with the Russian intervention, you have Facebook and Twitter who are cracking down on that more. So some of us are going to watch out for that more and understand what happened. And you had the Mueller report, you read pages 22 through 40 of volume 1 of the Mueller report, which talked about the Russian intervention. It really focused on how they were attacking African Americans as well. Okay, and we know the 2019 State of Black America report as well talked about African Americans and the vote, and it talked about how Russians targeted African Americans with a disinformation campaign in the 2016 election. But you still have some people who haven't gotten the memo and just clueless. All right. So I deal with the rapid voter suppression and how Trump is reversing policies for President Obama, and then similarities between Nixon becoming president in 1968 and Donald Trump becoming president in 2016. Okay, because Nixon ran on the platform of law and order, and that was part of Donald Trump's platform, law and order. And Nixon was a backlash to the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement, affirmative action, the rebellions that were taking place all across the country. Like in 1967 alone, there were 159 violent uprisings across the country, 159. Now, all of them were not on the level of a Detroit, which took place in 67, or Newark, New Jersey. But this is taking place all across the country. And law and order means protect white people and lock up Black people. And this is the platform that Nixon ran on. He was a backlash to all that. And Donald Trump was a backlash to 2 terms of President Barack Obama, and a lot of hatred that a lot of white people had against President Barack Obama. They just wanted any white man in the White House, right? And some of them are, some of them are upset at what's taking place because they didn't think it was, they thought everything was going to be rosy. He was going to make America great again. And a lot of them are suffering. Okay. Lastly, you'll get Ancient Kemet, the winter solstice, and the history of Christmas. Ancient Kemet, the winter solstice. Kemet's one of the original names for Egypt. Ancient Kemet, the winter solstice, and the history of Christmas. All right. That's a 3-hour presentation where I go deep into history of Christmas, go back to Ancient Kemet, go back to Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. We deal with the virgin birth, the immaculate conception, all these ancient African principles that get reinterpreted by various cultures over thousands of years. And then we deal with things like the Roman festival of Saturnalia. We deal with a lot of these other deities in various cultures that are born on or around December 25th, right? And similarities between them. So we deal with all that. Okay, so that is a bundle that should keep you busy for African American History Month, I think. Okay. That's 16 of my ladies. I think that'll keep you a little busy. All right. But that's the Michael Imhotep Black History Month bundle pack. That's available right now at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, we'll post a link here again. So we have those shipping out right away. And then also we have the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack. And that includes some of my best presentations that I did in 2019. Okay, we have that as well. All right. So you can order those. You can order those today. And we'll post the link for Black Migration 1619 to 2019. And Black Migrations was the annual theme that was the 2019 theme for African American History Month. Okay. So a lot of people don't know this. All right. There's an annual theme each year for African American History Month, what used to be called Black History Month. There's been an annual theme since 1928. Okay. So it started out as Negro History Week in 1926, created by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. But there's been an annual theme since 1928. All right. So the annual theme gives you purpose. It gives you direction on how to celebrate it each year. So you don't have to recycle the same 15 to 20 sanitized Negroes every year. And then just talk about runaway slaves and, things like this. And then people don't want to come to the Black History Month celebrations because it's the same thing every year. No, a lot of people don't understand the history behind the creation of African American History Month. So we don't know how to properly celebrate it. We don't know how to properly commemorate it. The 2020 theme is dealing with African Americans and the vote. African Americans and the vote. Okay. So when you go to asalh.org, 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 they give you direction. They have what the annual theme is each year. And that theme is not just to be celebrated during February. It's to be studied all year. Okay. This is once again one of the mistakes that we make. Okay, is not just to be celebrated in the month of February, it's to be studied, commemorated. We take it, we deal with this all year. Black migrations was the theme for 2019. And Black migrations dealt with not just the transatlantic slave trade, but it didn't just deal with forced migration, it dealt with voluntary migrations as well, dealt with things like the Great Migration, dealt with all different types of migrations, but the results of the migrations and how these migrations changed the world, changed America, changed the world. Whether we talk about the Harlem Renaissance, whether we talk about African Americans coming back home from World War II and getting involved in the civil rights movement, like Medgar Evers, who fought in World War II, who landed in Normandy June 6, 1944, as one of the 155,000 U.S. troops who landed in Normandy in France. When we talk about D-Day, right? We commemorated the 75th anniversary of D-Day in 2019. There was very little talk about the almost 2,000 African-American soldiers who landed in France. It landed in Normandy, June 6, 1944. Medgar Evers was one of them. And Medgar Evers comes back and gets involved in the civil rights movement. He becomes the first field secretary for the NAACP in Mississippi. And we know he's assassinated in June of 1963. I think it was June 11th, 1963. Medgar Evers was assassinated by Byron Della Beckwith, who was a member of the White Citizens Council. Okay. And we know the White Citizens Council was founded after Brown versus Board of Education, U.S. Supreme Court case made in 1954. And they were founded as a backlash to desegregation of the schools. And the White Citizens Council is going to spread all throughout the South. Okay. June 12, 1963. That's when it was early in the morning. It's like right after midnight, June 12, 1963. Medgar Evers was assassinated. Okay. All right. So, so we have that. So back to Annie Turnbo Malone very quickly here. And then also listen to the African History Network show Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. We're going to get deep into it each Sunday. And we broadcast right here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Okay. So Annie Turnbo Malone is employing thousands of people. as well. She's a philanthropist also. She gave $25,000 to Howard University Medical School during the 1920s. We know that she's committed to the African-American community. Malone was committed to community building and social welfare. To that end, she built Portrayed College in 1918, a complex that included her business office and her business's office, manufacturing operation, and training center, as well as facilities for civic, religious, and social functions also, okay? Now, by 1926, the college employed 175 people. It franchised outlets in North and South America, Africa, and the Philippines, and employed some 75,000 women, okay? Annie Turnbo Malone, I mean, so there needs to be a movie by Annie Turnbo Malone. There needs to be a mini series or something about her as well, because this was a phenomenal woman also, okay? And very few people actually know about it. Now, it is believed that she was worth $14 million at one point during the 1920s. Her 1924 income totaled nearly $40,000. However, despite her wealth, Annie Turnbo Malone Malone lived conservatively and gave away much of her fortune to help other African Americans. She is one of America's first major Black philanthropists. Malone donated large sums to countless charities. She is one of she donated large sums to countless charities. At one time, it is believed that she was supporting 2 full-time college students in every Black land-grant college in the United States. She gave $25,000 to the Howard University Medical School in the 1920s. And at the time, that was the largest gift the school had ever received from an African-American. She also contributed to Tuskegee Institute as well. Malone was also generous with family and employees. She educated many of her nieces and nephews and bought homes for her brothers and sisters. She awarded employees with lavish gifts for attendance, punctuality, service anniversaries, and as rewards for investing in real estate. A $25,000 donation from Malone helped build the St. Louis Colored YWCA. She also contributed to several orphanages and donated the site for the St. Louis Colored Orphans Home. She raised most of the orphanage's construction costs and served on the home's executive board from 1919 to 1943, okay? And she was also an honorary member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So the Zetas are my sorors. I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Okay, and you know the Zetas are commemorating their 100th year anniversary this January as well. So shout out to the Zetas, and we just commemorated our Founders Day. It was January 9th, 1914, also with Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. All right, so shout out to my Sigma brothers as well. Right now, one of the reasons why some people suspect, and I think, that Annie Malone does not get the credit is because she had some business failures and she had some tax problems. Okay, so she lost part of her fortune. So I think maybe this is why this happened. So Malone's generosity raised her stature in the community, but contributed to the financial decline of her business. While she was spending time on civic affairs and distributing her wealth to various organizations, she left the day-to-day affairs of the business in the hands of managers, including her husband. Some of these managers were inexperienced or dishonest, eventually leading to the dismantling of her business empire. For the 6 years leading up to 1927, Annie and Aaron Malone became embroiled in a power struggle over control of the Poro business, P-O-R-O. The struggle was kept quiet until 1927, when Aaron Malone filed for divorce and demanded half the business. He claimed that Poro's success was due to contacts he brought to the company, okay? He courted Black leaders and politicians who sided with him in the highly publicized divorce. Annie Malone's devotion to Black women and charitable institutions led poor workers and church leaders to support her. Okay, so you have, it's like what it's kind of Black Dynasty, um, so you have divisions in the African American community over who they are supporting in this huge divorce that is, newspaper articles are being written about them, things like this. And it's like, whose team are you on? Team Annie or Team Aaron? All right. So now Malone also had the support of the media and Mary McLeod Bethune, who was president of the National Association of Colored Women. Having the support of so powerful a woman helped Annie Malone prevail in the dispute and allowed her to keep her business. She negotiated a settlement of $200,000. And the $200,000 back in, 1927, man, I'm not sure how many millions there's like today. That's a lot of money. Okay. So in 1930, Malone moved her business to Chicago, where its location became known as the Portrayed Block. Her financial trouble continued when she became the target of lawsuits, including one by a former employee who claimed credit for her success. When the suit was settled in 1937, she was forced to sell the St. Louis property. Malone's business was further crippled by enormous debt to the federal government for unpaid real estate and excise taxes, okay? So the excise tax was a type of luxury tax. This is during the Great Depression. The federal government required a 20% tax on luxuries, including hair care products, during the 1920s. In 1943, Annie Malone owed almost $100,000. The government was constantly taking her to court, and by 1951, it took control of Poro, took control of her business, Poro. Most of the property was sold to pay the taxes. Now, Annie Turnbo Malone's business failure tarnished her image. Her former employee, Madam C.J. Walker, often overshadows Malone because Walker's business remains successful and more widely known. Walker is often credited as the originator of the Black beauty and cosmetics business and the direct distribution and sales agent system that Annie Turnbo Malone developed. Many historians believe Malone deserves more credit for her devotion to helping African Americans gain financial independence and her generous donations to educational, civic, and social causes. And I'm one of those. I agree with that. She should get a lot more credit for that. So Annie Malone died of a stroke on May 10th, 1957 in Chicago, Illinois. She was 87 years old. By the time of her death, Malone had lost her national visibility and most of her money. Having no children, her estate valued at $100,000 was left to her nieces and nephews, okay? And for more information, check out Gale Encyclopedia for this, dealing with, they have a biography on Annie Turnbo Malone from G-A-L-E, Gale Encyclopedia. You can Google that, all right? So the 4-part series from Netflix, which debuts March 20th, okay? It's on Netflix. And now I'm not sure if they're going to upload all 4 episodes at one time. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. But I'm going to watch this. March 20th, 2020. Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. It's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out, how they depict Annie Malone as well. I'm not sure who's going to play her. Hopefully she's depicted in the series. But we know Octavia Spencer, who is a fantastic actress. Octavia Spencer is going to portray Annie Malone. All right. Okay. All right. So, all right, African American business owner is supposed to name your business here on the thread of the broadcast. And we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network as well. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. our current promotion, get buy 1 month, get 2 months free. That's going on for a few more days. We have a few spots left. And let's see, we have a new advertiser also. RRCreditservices.com. Are you tired of having poor credit? Are you tired of paying those high double-digit interest rates? Would you like to purchase your dream home one day? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, then RRR Credit Services is your answer. RRR Credit Services is your one-stop when it comes to credit education and repair. They equip you by providing solutions which will enable you to rebuild your financial future. The affordable cost to become a new client is just $30 for the first month. Take the first step by giving them a call right now. That's Chandranette Middleton is the owner of RRR Services. So you'll either get Chandranette or one of her assistants. Give them a call, 1-800-607-1989, 1-800-607-1989 for a free credit consultation. Don't delay, and let them know you found out about this from the African History Network as well. And the website is rrrcreditservices.com, 3 R's, triple R. We'll post that right here. Okay. Let me see here. Who else we have here? Try to get some of your comments. All right, but I think we need more. We need more series like this dealing with Madam C.J. Walker as well. Okay, because there's so many of our heroes and heroines that we don't know a lot of information about. They need to have something like this dealing with Ida B. Wells. They need to have one on Sojourner Truth. They need to have one, especially things after slavery. Sojourner Truth doesn't get really talked about a lot. I think there should be one on Sojourner Truth. Definitely Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells, and was a real freedom fighter. That sister is underrated. There should be one on Fannie Lou Hamer. Also, okay, so there's a lot of history to tell. Then we should have the mini series dealing with ancient African history as well. Ghana, Songhai, Mali, ancient Kemet, Abyssinia, Ethiopia, Nubia, Ta-Nehisi. So it's wide open, okay. And one of the things that the film Black Panther did, with it being so successful, is it showed the need to tell the story of African history prior to slavery as well. Because one of the reasons why it was so successful is that it was not quote unquote another slave movie. Okay, so all right. So look, guys, hey, we're going to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Listen to the African History Network show Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, as well. Be sure to order our new bundle pack. The 15 is actually 16 DVD bundle packs on sale right now. For limited time, only $100, the Black History Month bundle pack. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.